Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, not to some quaint village or a bustling ancient city, but to a place where the air itself hung heavy with secrets. A place buried deep beneath the earth, untouched for decades. Imagine, if you will, the biting wind whipping across a desolate, snow-dusted landscape in the heart of what was once Nazi Germany. The only sound is the crunch of your boots on the frozen ground. And perhaps the distant howl of something wild. You're part of a survey team. Really, just looking for old infrastructure, maybe some forgotten foundations, certainly not anything that would rattle the very foundations of history itself. You're shivering, perhaps, more from the creeping dread than the cold, because deep down, you know something is waiting, something that, when it finally sees the light of day, will make the hair on your arms stand on end and leave you wondering if some things are better left buried. You probably won't survive this, at least not metaphorically speaking, because what you're about to uncover will stick with you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. It's always wild to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're there, feeling the biting wind, the cold seeping into your bones despite the heavy gear. The year is post-war, but the scars of conflict are still fresh, visible on the landscape, in the minds of the people. And certainly, as you're about to find out, beneath the earth, your team isn't specifically looking for Nazi relics. That's not the primary directive. You're part of a geological survey, mapping out old mines, potential mineral deposits, anything that could aid in the colossal task of rebuilding a shattered nation. It's tedious work, often thankless, filled with long hours and the constant chill of the European winter. One afternoon, your ground-penetrating radar, usually so predictable in its mundane readouts, starts spitting back something, an anomaly. Not a natural geological formation, not a collapsed mine shaft, but something structured, immense, and deep. It's too regular, too defined to be anything but man-made. The initial thought is a forgotten bunker, perhaps a simple ammunition dump or a command post that somehow slipped through the cracks of post-war demolition and documentation. After all, the landscape was riddled with them, like forgotten teeth of a monstrous war machine. Historians still argue whether the Allies truly catalogued every single underground facility the Nazis built, or if some simply vanished from official records, either deliberately or through sheer chaos. But this feels different. The readings are unusually strong, indicating a significant amount of reinforced concrete and steel, far more than your typical tactical bunker. As you start the painstaking process of excavation, the ground resists, frozen solid, making every shovel stroke an act of will. Days turn into weeks. The deeper you go, the more the air seems to thin, a peculiar stillness descending on the site. You hit the concrete roof first, a slab so thick you wonder if they were trying to withstand an atomic bomb. Even though those were just theoretical nightmares back then. The silence of the remote location is punctuated only by the grind of your drilling equipment and the nervous chatter of your team. You remember one of the old-timers, a grizzled engineer with a 1,000-yard stare, muttering about how some places just feel wrong. You scoffed then, thinking it was just the cold getting to him. But now, a chill independent of the temperature begins to prickle your skin. It's the kind of feeling you get when you're alone in an old house and swear you hear something breathing in the next room. This isn't just concrete. This is a lid on a forgotten nightmare. The moment the drill finally breaks through the thick concrete, it's not the rush of stale air you expect, nor the telltale scent of decay. Instead, it's nothing, an eerie vacuum that seems to pull the very sound from the air around you. You're lowering a camera, a crude, bulky thing with a single powerful light, into the freshly bored hole. The monitor flickers to life, showing only an inky blackness, impenetrable even by the concentrated beam. You adjust the angle, trying to make sense of the void, when suddenly, a glint, then another, And another. Not dust motes dancing in the light. But shapes. Regular shapes. Metallic. Perhaps. This isn't a collapsed chamber. It's intact. Completely. The initial reports you send back are met with a mixture of skepticism and alarm. A forgotten Nazi bunker. Unlikely, they say. Every significant underground structure was supposed to be destroyed, sealed, or thoroughly investigated. Yet, here it is, unequivocally there. The historical context of this period is crucial. The world was still reeling from the war's end, trying to piece itself back together. The last thing anyone needed was a ghost from the Third Reich suddenly reappearing. Mainstream historical fact: the post-war denazification efforts were extensive, aimed at purging Nazi ideology and its remnants from German society. This meant destroying symbols, prosecuting war criminals, and dismantling anything that could serve as a monument or rallying point for the old regime. So, a perfectly preserved, unknown bunker was, to put it mildly, a significant oversight. As the access point is slowly widened, revealing a heavy, steel-reinforced door, you start to feel the weight of history pressing down. The door itself is unmarked. No swastikas, no eagles, just cold, unyielding metal. It's almost more disturbing in its anonymity, as if the contents within were too terrible to even brand. You can feel the eyes of your team on you, a silent question hanging in the cold air. What are we really getting into? A quirky tidbit emerges as you wait for the specialists. Local folklore in the area speaks of a ghost train that would occasionally rumble beneath the ground during the war, with no visible tracks above. Most dismissed it as old wives' tales, a morbid way for people to cope with the unseen horrors of conflict. But now, a flicker of doubt passes through the back of your mind. Could this bunker be connected? Was it supplied by something subterranean? The specialists arrive, a grim-faced assortment of military engineers, historians, and even a couple of scientists whose fields you can barely pronounce. Their initial excitement quickly gives way to a profound sense of unease. The air inside, once the seals on the door are carefully breached, is indeed stale, but also carries a faint, acrid scent, almost metallic, mixed with something else you can't quite place. It's not the smell of damp earth or decaying wood, it's something artificial. Something chemical. The first steps into the darkness are tentative, illuminated by powerful floodlights now brought to the site. You see it then, a long, descending corridor, lined with smooth, almost seamless concrete. It's built with an obsessive precision that speaks not of wartime haste, but of meticulous, long-term planning, the kind of planning that makes your skin crawl. Historians still argue whether the scale of Nazi underground construction was truly understood by the Allies, or if many facilities remained undiscovered due to their sheer complexity and the chaos of the war's end. This bunker feels like a testament to that debate. As you move deeper, the temperature inside is surprisingly stable, almost cool, as if some unseen system is still working, or worked right up until the last moment. The corridor leads to a large, cavernous chamber, and it's here that the first true shock hits you. This isn't just a bunker. This is something else entirely. Something cold, precise, and utterly terrifying. As your floodlights cut through the perpetual gloom of the colossal chamber, the sheer scale of the place begins to truly sink in. This isn't a series of cramped rooms designed for soldiers hunkering down during an air raid. This is an underground complex, meticulously planned and executed. The walls are smooth, almost polished concrete, seemingly impervious to the passage of time. There are no exposed pipes, no crude wiring. Everything is integrated, hidden, designed for absolute efficiency. You notice conduits, thick and snaking, disappearing into the floor and ceiling, hinting at a sophisticated, perhaps even redundant, power supply. It's like stepping into a forgotten city, or rather, a single, vast, terrifying building. The air, though stale, doesn't carry the expected scent of dust and decay, but rather a faint, metallic tang, almost like ozone after a lightning storm. The layout itself is unsettling. Instead of a straightforward series of rooms, You find a labyrinthine network of corridors leading off the main chamber, each precisely numbered and labeled with cryptic German designations that make no immediate sense to anyone on your team. It's not a military command center, at least not in any conventional sense. There are no maps on the walls, no tactical diagrams, no indicators of troop movements or battle plans. Instead, you see specialized bays, some sealed, others with heavy, reinforced doors that look like they could withstand a direct hit. You realize this isn't a bunker for fighting a war, but for something else related to it. Mainstream historical fact: the Nazis, particularly elements within the SS and various scientific departments, were obsessed with developing wonder weapons and advanced technologies, often driven by a mix of genuine scientific inquiry and outlandish pseudo-scientific beliefs. This push for secret weapons and advanced research led to the construction of numerous clandestine facilities across the Reich. But this place feels different, somehow grander, more secretive than even the V-2 rocket facilities or atomic research labs. It's a design that screams long-term, high security, top secret. One of the younger engineers on your team points out a peculiar feature: certain sections of the floor appear to be raised, almost like enormous platforms, with recessed tracks leading away into other darkened passages. It reminds you, eerily, of a train station, but far too small for any conventional rolling stock. A quirky tidbit you recall is how some of the most esoteric Nazi projects involved bizarre, even occult-inspired, research into anti-gravity or free energy devices, often dismissed as fringe theories. But looking at these tracks, you can't help but wonder, what kind of conveyance would need such precise, embedded pathways within a sealed underground facility? It adds another layer of weirdness to an already deeply unsettling discovery. As you explore further, you note the extraordinary quality of the construction. The concrete is smooth, almost seamless, with no cracks or signs of water damage. Despite decades of disuse, the air circulation system, though silent now, appears to be remarkably complex, with enormous ducts crisscrossing the ceilings. It suggests a facility designed for long-term habitation or for housing highly sensitive equipment that required strict environmental controls. Historians still argue whether the resources poured into such highly specialized, secret projects truly hindered the overall German war effort, or if these desperate attempts at technological breakthroughs were simply the logical, if ultimately futile, conclusion of a desperate regime. This bunker, with its immense cost and hidden purpose, certainly throws fuel onto that particular academic fire. You can almost hear the ghost of a German architect, impeccably dressed, muttering about precise angles and reinforced steel, utterly oblivious to the moral black hole his work served. And you, standing there in the cold silence, can only shiver. As you move deeper into the bunker, the air grows heavier, almost charged, and the meticulously smooth concrete walls begin to give way to something even more disconcerting. You start to notice niches in the walls, not for structural support, but for display. And then, you see the first true artifacts. They're not weapons, not documents, not even propaganda posters. They're oddities, glass cases, surprisingly intact, housing strange, almost alien objects. One holds what looks like a series of intricately carved wooden figures, but their forms are unlike anything you've ever seen. Vaguely humanoid yet elongated, with disproportionate limbs and heads that seem to whisper of something not quite earthly. Another contains what appear to be meticulously preserved biological samples, small, desiccated specimens suspended in amber-like resin, their shapes vaguely reptilian or insectoid. But again, subtly wrong. You can almost hear the gasp from your own throat, a silent reaction to the sheer strangeness of it all. It's like stumbling into a collector's private, macabre museum, dedicated to the bizarre and the unexplained. There are shelves filled with books, but their bindings are unlike any you recognize. And the scripts, though undeniably German in some places, are interwoven with symbols that appear to be utterly foreign, almost alchemical. Some of the pages are made of a strange, thin metallic foil, etched with intricate diagrams that defy immediate interpretation. This isn't just a bunker, it's a repository, a vault of something. Mainstream historical fact: the Nazi regime, particularly Heinrich Himmler's SS, had a deep and disturbing fascination with pseudo-archaeology, occultism, and esoteric sciences. They funded expeditions to remote corners of the globe, seeking mythical artifacts and supposed evidence of Aryan origins, often with absurd and horrific results. The Einnabe, an SS-affiliated think tank, was at the forefront of these efforts, blending legitimate scientific research with outright fantasy. This bunker, with its bizarre collection, feels like a dark echo of those twisted pursuits. One of the historians on your team, a usually unflappable woman who's seen everything from ancient Roman ruins to battle-scarred concentration camps, mutters under her breath about Wunderkammer, referring to the old European cabinets of curiosities that predated modern museums. But this is no mere curiosity cabinet. It's a terrifyingly systematic collection of the utterly inexplicable. A quirky tidbit you recall is the persistent rumor among soldiers during the war about certain SS units collecting unusual items from conquered territories, ranging from ancient relics to strange geological samples, often without explanation. Could this be where some of those finds ended up? It adds another layer of eerie coincidence to the mounting evidence of something far beyond normal military operations. As you gaze at a particularly disturbing object, a sphere of polished, jet black stone, utterly featureless yet seeming to absorb all light around it, a chilling thought crosses your mind. These aren't just display items. They feel like components, pieces of a larger, unrevealed puzzle. What were they doing with these things? The air around the black sphere seems colder, somehow, as if it's siphoning off the ambient warmth. Historians still argue whether the Nazis' occult obsessions were merely propaganda tools to motivate a superstitious populace, or if certain high-ranking individuals genuinely believed in the power of these strange artifacts and esoteric sciences. Standing there, bathed in the anemic glow of your floodlights, surrounded by these chilling objects, you lean towards the latter, because no sane military would waste precious wartime resources on simply collecting such oddities without some perceived darker purpose. This is a glimpse into the hidden, terrifying intellectual underworld of the Third Reich, a place far stranger and more dangerous than any conventional battlefield. The silence in the bunker is oppressive, broken only by the soft clicks of cameras and the hushed whispers of your team as they document the bewildering array of artifacts. You can feel the collective disquiet growing, a shared understanding that what you're seeing defies all known historical narratives. These aren't simply curios. They are pieces of a puzzle so profoundly unsettling. It makes the hair on your arms stand on end. You watch as a specialist, trying to be clinical, attempts to categorize the strange biological specimens. They appear to be animalistic, yet possess features that simply do not correspond to any known terrestrial species. Even ancient ones. Small, multi-jointed limbs, peculiar dermal patterns, and skull formations that defy evolutionary logic. It's like a bad science fiction movie playing out in real time, only the props are chillingly real. Initial attempts at interpretation are chaotic. A flurry of speculative theories and desperate attempts to fit these square pegs into the round holes of established history. Is it elaborate trickery, a bizarre, high-level hoax designed to mislead Allied intelligence? But the sheer scale, the meticulous construction of the bunker itself, argues against such a simple explanation. Who would expend such resources, such secrecy, on a mere deception that would likely never be discovered? The very notion feels absurd. Mainstream historical fact: near the end of the war, as the Allied forces closed in, the Nazis destroyed vast amounts of documentation and evidence of their more heinous experiments and secret projects in an attempt to conceal their atrocities and prevent their advanced technologies from falling into enemy hands. This frantic destruction led to many gaps in historical understanding, leaving room for speculation and the occasional Shocking discovery. The pristine condition of this bunker and its contents suggests it was either sealed off in extreme haste, or perhaps deliberately hidden away, a contingency plan for a future that never arrived. You observe one of the cryptographers poring over the strange texts found in the bunker, their brow furrowed in concentration. The German segments are clear enough, but they are interspersed with symbols and sequences that resemble no known alphabet. It's like a language trying to break free from the confines of human understanding. A quirky tidbit that comes to mind is the real-world search for the Amber Room, a fabled chamber decorated with amber panels and gold leaf, looted by the Nazis and never recovered. While this bunker holds no such treasure, the obsessive secrecy and the deliberate concealment feel like they belong to the same dark mentality that would hide a priceless work of art or, in this case, something far more sinister. The initial reports you sent back are met with a mixture of disbelief and frantic urgency. High Command demands more information. Faster. The world leaders, still reeling from the devastating war, would find a discovery of this magnitude almost impossible to digest. How do you explain to a traumatized public that the enemy they just defeated was apparently dabbling in things that defy known science and even reality? Historians still argue whether the Allies underestimated the depth of Nazi scientific and occult experimentation, or if much of what was discovered was intentionally suppressed to prevent widespread panic or the proliferation of dangerous knowledge. Standing there, surrounded by the tangible evidence of something deeply disturbing, you can almost hear the echoing debates in hushed, top-secret meetings. The very air seems to hum with the lingering questions of what exactly these artifacts were meant for, and what dark purpose they served in the twisted vision of the Third Reich. The answers, you realize, are only just beginning to unfold. The initial shock of the artifacts slowly begins to recede, replaced by a cold, intellectual dread. It's the kind of dread that settles deep in your bones, making you question not just history, but the very nature of reality. As the specialists continue their meticulous, painstaking work, piecing together fragments of information, a clearer, yet infinitely more disturbing, picture begins to emerge. The strange symbols, once dismissed as mere decorative elements or esoteric nonsense, start to recur, forming patterns. The texts, when partially deciphered, speak not of military strategy or industrial production, but of transcendent energies, biological reconstruction, and extradimensional conduits. It's less like reading a historical document and more like stumbling upon the mad scribblings of a cosmic cult. You observe the lead historian, a man whose life has been dedicated to the brutal realities of the Third Reich, staring at a schematic etched into one of the metallic foils. His face is pale, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple despite the cool air of the bunker. The drawing depicts not a weapon, but a complex array of what appear to be interlocking rings and coils, surrounding a central chamber. It looks like something from a fantastical engineer's notebook, utterly beyond the known technology of the 1940s. The sheer precision of the design, the mathematical notations accompanying it, suggest it's not a fantasy. This isn't just a collection of oddities, it's a hidden, functional laboratory. Mainstream historical fact: towards the end of World War II, many high-ranking Nazi officials, including Hitler himself, became increasingly desperate, clinging to any promise of a technological breakthrough that could turn the tide of the war. This desperation led to the funding of increasingly radical and fringe scientific projects, often with little oversight or ethical consideration. This bunker seems to be a testament to that last, frantic, and utterly terrifying gamble. The air in the chamber seems to thicken, and you realize the peculiar smell you noticed earlier is more pronounced now, almost electric. One of the scientists points to a faint scorch mark on the floor beneath where one of the large metallic objects would have stood. Not the charring of fire, but something else, like a concentrated burst of energy. A quirky tidbit you might recall from old forgotten papers is the whispered legend of Die Glock, or the bell, a supposed top-secret Nazi device rumored to be an anti-gravity or time travel machine. while often dismissed as pure fiction. The strange, bell-shaped object you briefly glimpsed in one of the sealed bays, coupled with the scorch marks and the talk of transcendent energies in the texts, makes that outlandish theory suddenly feel a little less fantastical and a lot more chilling. The realization hits you like a cold wave. This wasn't just a hiding place for strange artifacts. It was a place of active research. They weren't just collecting, they were experimenting. On what, or with what, remains terrifyingly unclear, but the implications are staggering. Historians still argue whether the most extreme Nazi scientific programs were driven by genuine belief in their fringe theories or simply a cynical exploitation of desperate circumstances. But as you look at the perfectly preserved, baffling technology around you, the thought emerges, what if they were onto something? What if they were closer than anyone could have ever imagined to unlocking powers that should never be unleashed? The thought makes your stomach churn. A sickening blend of awe and absolute horror. This bunker is not just a discovery, it's a profound, disturbing question mark left by history. The true horror of the bunker crystallizes with the decipherment of a master designation, found etched into a central control panel, Project Phoenix. Project Phoenix, the name itself, referencing the mythical bird rising from ashes, is chillingly apt given the Nazi obsession with renewal and a thousand-year Reich. But this Phoenix, you realize, isn't about cultural rebirth. It's about something far more literal and terrifying. The scattered notes and schematics, painstakingly pieced together by the cryptography team, begin to paint a picture of the project's aims, not simply to create advanced weaponry, but to manipulate fundamental forces, perhaps even life itself, in ways that defy ethical boundaries and scientific understanding. They weren't just researching, they were attempting to recreate, to resurrect, to control. You find yourself staring at an enormous, cylindrical chamber at the very heart of the complex, partially obscured by a heavy, blast-proof door that now stands slightly ajar. The air here feels different, colder, and a faint, almost imperceptible hum seems to vibrate through the concrete floor. This, you realize with a sickening lurch in your stomach, is the core of Project Phoenix. Not a storage facility, not a research lab in the traditional sense, but a crucible, a place where something truly monstrous was intended to happen. Or perhaps, already did. Mainstream historical fact: Nazi Germany was notorious for its horrific human experimentation, particularly under the guise of medical and scientific research, often carried out in concentration camps. These experiments, driven by twisted ideological goals and a desperate pursuit of scientific advantage, showcased a complete disregard for human life and dignity. The implications of Project Phoenix, with its stated aims, feel like an extension of this same depraved mindset, but on an entirely different, perhaps cosmic, scale. One of the specialists, a structural engineer, points out the unique baffling system built into the walls of this central chamber, designed to withstand immense internal pressure or, perhaps, energy discharges. It's overkill for anything you can imagine. A quirky tidbit: during the late stages of the war, there were persistent whispers among German scientists of a Reichsbell, or Die Glock, a supposed top-secret, anti-gravity device or even a time machine. While often dismissed as pure fantasy or propaganda, the cylindrical nature of this main chamber, combined with the earlier, transcendent energies, and strange metallic objects, makes you wonder if those fantastical rumors had a terrifyingly real, if utterly misguided, basis in truth. You can almost hear the cackles of mad scientists echoing in the silence. The discovery of intricate, heavy-duty electrical conduits leading into the central chamber, far beyond what any known generator of the era could produce, suggests that whatever experiments were conducted here required immense power. Historians still argue whether the Nazis' scientific endeavors, particularly their more fringe projects, were truly driven by a belief in their own pseudo-science, or if they were merely desperate attempts to gain an advantage. Regardless of the ethical cost, looking at the sheer commitment of resources to Project Phoenix, you can't help but feel it was a chilling combination of both: a fanatical belief in their own warped ideologies, combined with a ruthless pragmatism that would stop at nothing to achieve their aims. The air in this central chamber feels heavy with the echoes of their twisted ambitions. A silent testament to a horrifying vision that, thankfully, never fully materialized. Or did it? The deeper you penetrate into the cold heart of Project Phonics, the more the bizarre artifacts start to make a terrifying kind of sense. Fitting into a grotesque jigsaw puzzle, in a series of smaller, sterile rooms branching off the main cylindrical chamber, you find what appear to be observation theaters, complete with reinforced glass and banks of sophisticated, yet anachronistic, monitoring equipment. And within these rooms, the true horror of the biological wonders and horrors unfurls. You discover not just preserved specimens, but complex vivariums, some still containing a desiccated, unidentifiable organic residue. These were not just collected oddities, they were once living, breathing, and likely suffering test subjects. One room, sealed behind a particularly heavy lead-lined door, contains rows of what can only be described as biological storage units. Within them, suspended in a viscous, clear liquid, are more of the peculiar, non-terrestrial forms you glimpsed earlier. Some are clearly malformed, twisted aberrations, while others appeared chillingly intact, almost perfectly preserved. It's a chilling zoo of the impossible, a collection of life that never should have been, or at least, never should have been here. The ethical dimensions of this discovery are profoundly disturbing. It screams of a complete disregard for any form of life, manipulated and warped for an unknown, sinister purpose. Mainstream historical fact: Dr. Joseph Mengele, the Angel of Death at Auschwitz, conducted horrific medical experiments on concentration camp prisoners, driven by racial ideology and a twisted fascination with genetics and human physiology. While Mengele's experiments were primarily on humans, the discovery in this bunker points to a broader, perhaps even more audacious, Nazi scientific agenda that extended to non-human, possibly even extraterrestrial, biological entities. It raises the chilling question of how far their depravity truly reached. One of the biologists on your team, usually so composed and analytical, nearly retches as he examines a particularly large specimen. Its eyes, if you can call them that, seemingly staring out from its liquid prison. He mutters about morphological impossibility and the unnatural fusion of different biological traits. A quirky tidbit that suddenly feels less quirky and more terrifying is the persistent rumors that circulated among captured German scientists after the war about biological weapons that weren't merely diseases, but engineered organisms designed to spread panic and chaos through their very appearance. Could these be the grotesque prototypes of such a nightmarish vision? The thought makes your stomach churn. The notes accompanying these biological horrors are written in the same cryptic German interspersed with the unknown symbols. But enough is legible to send shivers down your spine. Phrases like adaptation for hostile environments, enhanced resilience, and genetic manipulation for accelerated development leap out from the pages. It sounds like they were attempting to engineer something. For what purpose? To create super soldiers that were not human? To introduce new, terrifying organisms into the world? Historians still argue whether the Nazis' more extreme biological research was purely for military applications, or if it was also driven by a deeper, more ideological desire to perfect life, even if it meant creating abominations. As you stand amidst these silent, preserved horrors, the debate feels painfully irrelevant. What matters is that they did this. They tried this. And the evidence is right here, frozen in time, waiting to be unleashed into a world that, even now, isn't quite ready for the true depths of their depravity. As you step out of the biological horror show, the very air in the bunker seems to thicken, humming with an unspoken energy. You enter another section, less overtly gruesome than the last, but far more perplexing. This is where the truly anomalous technology resides. Here, the concrete walls give way to polished metallic surfaces, gleaming faintly under your floodlights. Large, complex machines stand silent, Their intricate components a baffling array of polished metals, thick glass tubes, and strange, glowing crystals embedded in what looks like a sophisticated power conduit system. Nothing in your collective experience, from the most advanced Allied engineering to captured German schematics, prepares you for this. One enormous device dominates a central chamber, resembling a colossal, multi-layered gyroscope or perhaps a particle accelerator, but designed with an aesthetic that is both alien and disturbingly familiar. Like a nightmare interpretation of Art Deco. Heavy cables, thicker than your arm, snake out from it, disappearing into the floor and ceiling. It's too clean, too well preserved to be a mere relic. It feels like it could, with the flick of a switch, hum back to life. Mainstream historical fact: near the war's end, Allied intelligence was keenly aware of Germany's advanced rocketry, jet engine development, and early radar systems. Operation Paperclip, for instance, saw the US bring over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to America to exploit their expertise. However, nothing in those post-war intelligence reports or interrogations ever hinted at technology of this caliber or nature. This bunker throws a massive wrench into the established narrative of wartime technological capabilities. One of the physicists on your team, a stoic man who usually dismisses anything without empirical evidence, stands before a console covered in unfamiliar gauges and dials. He traces a finger over a series of symbols that are neither German nor the strange runes you've seen elsewhere. He mutters, "The theoretical energy requirements for this? It's beyond anything we know." A quirky tidbit that springs to mind is the persistent rumor of Nazi attempts to reverse engineer crashed alien spacecraft. A tale often relegated to the realm of pulp fiction. Yet, looking at the seamless, almost organic curves of some of the machinery, and the inexplicable complexity, you can't help but wonder if the fiction was merely a distorted echo of a much stranger truth. This isn't conventional engineering. It feels almost grown. The purpose of these machines is inscrutable. Are they power generators, communication devices, weapons of some unimaginable force? The fragmented notes you've seen speak vaguely of dimensional resonance and matter manipulation. Historians still argue whether the Nazis' more outlandish technological pursuits were ever truly close to fruition, or if they were largely theoretical exercises designed to impress and deceive. But standing here, surrounded by these silent, potent machines, you realize the debate shifts from if they were attempting these things, to what they were attempting to achieve, and how close they might have come. The air hums with a lingering sense of immense, untapped power, and you feel a profound chill, not just from the bunker's cold, but from the realization of what might have been unleashed had these machines ever truly sprung to life. The technological anomalies and biological grotesqueries you've encountered thus far pale in comparison to the question that now looms largest: who were the individuals behind Project Phoenix? As your team delves deeper into the bunker's few remaining records, mostly encrypted logs and personal effects found in a small, self-contained living quarter, the picture of the human element begins to emerge. And it's as chilling as everything else. These weren't ordinary soldiers or typical Reich scientists. The names, when they can be cross-referenced, belong to individuals who vanished from official records long before the war's end. Often prominent, but deeply secretive, figures from esoteric scientific circles. Or, more disturbingly, individuals with known links to the AIMNIB's most radical branches. You find personal effects, a well-worn copy of Nietzsche, a framed photograph of a severe-looking woman in a laboratory coat, and a meticulously kept journal. The journal, written in a cramped, precise hand, details not only scientific observations but also philosophical musings on human transcendence and the shaping of a new reality. It's the diary of someone utterly consumed by their work, utterly convinced of their righteousness, and utterly divorced from conventional morality. Their roles, you infer, were not just scientific, but almost priestly, guarding a dark, terrifying secret. Mainstream historical fact: many high-ranking Nazi scientists and engineers, particularly those involved in sensitive projects, were either captured by Allied forces, escaped to places like South America, or disappeared without a trace in the chaos of the war's final days. The lack of detailed post-war accounts from anyone directly involved in a project of this scale only underscores its extreme secrecy and the success of its concealment. This bunker, in its untouched state, represents a profound gap in that historical record. As you sift through the sparse personal items, you notice a small, metallic insignia. Unlike any official SS or Wehrmacht emblem, it depicts a stylized, three-pronged symbol, reminiscent of an ancient runic design, but twisted, almost predatory. A quirky tidbit you might recall is the persistent, whispered legend among intelligence circles that certain elite SS units, specifically the Black Order under Himmler, engaged in rituals and had secret symbols known only to their inner circle. Separate from the more public Reich iconography, could this insignia denote membership in such a truly hidden, fanatical faction, one committed to a scientific and philosophical agenda even darker than the mainstream Nazi ideology? It adds another layer of chilling, almost occult, significance to the bunker's inhabitants. The ultimate fates of these individuals remain largely a mystery. Did they perish here, sealing themselves in, or did they escape, taking their monstrous knowledge with them into the shadows? The bunker shows no signs of forced entry or hurried evacuation in the last moments, suggesting a deliberate, controlled shutdown. Historians still argue whether the most extreme elements of the Nazi regime truly believed they could outlast the war in hidden enclaves, preserving their darkest projects for a future resurgence. Looking at the meticulous preservation of Project Phoenix, you can't help but feel that its creators fully intended for their work to either remain hidden until the right time, or for it to serve as a seed for something unimaginable. The ghost of their ambition, and their monstrous intellect, hangs heavy in the air, a silent testament to a project that went far beyond mere warfare. The revelation of Project Phoenix, and the unspeakable discoveries within, reverberated through the highest echelons of power like a shockwave. Initial reports were met with outright disbelief, then frantic, top-secret verification. You can imagine the scene: somber faces in smoke-filled rooms, maps spread out, while hushed voices discuss the implications of what you and your team have unearthed. The global reactions were, understandably, one of profound alarm. This wasn't just another hidden Nazi bunker. This was a Pandora's box of scientific and biological nightmares. The immediate impulse from the Allied powers, particularly those with a vested interest in post-war stability, was to contain the information. Mainstream historical fact: during the Cold War, both the West and the Soviet Union engaged in intense efforts to acquire German scientific expertise and technology, often suppressing information about the more ethically dubious or anomalous projects to avoid public panic or an arms race based on unsubstantiated claims. This discovery, however, would have tested those limits of suppression. How do you keep something this profound under wraps? Especially something so utterly terrifying. You watch from the sidelines as grim-faced military police, intelligence agents, and highly vetted scientists descend upon the site. The sheer scale of the operation to secure and analyze the bunker is immense, far exceeding anything typically deployed for a historical discovery. It's treated less like an archaeological find and more like a live, contained threat. The paranoia is palpable, a thick layer of suspicion settling over everyone involved. What if this isn't the only one? What if the knowledge contained within somehow escaped? One of the younger, less experienced soldiers guarding the perimeter, his face pale and eyes wide, whispers to you about strange lights he saw in the sky weeks before your discovery. He quickly dismisses it as a trick of the light or fatigue. But the comment hangs in the air, a quirky tidbit that suddenly feels less like a coincidence and more like a disturbing possibility. Perhaps the bunker wasn't just discovered, perhaps it was somehow activated, or even revealed, by some lingering energy. The thought sends a shiver down your spine. The international community, though largely kept in the dark about the specifics, would have been gripped by a vague, unsettling fear. Rumors would undoubtedly start to circulate. Distorted whispers of Nazi superweapons and hidden experiments. This creates a fertile ground for the very conspiracy theories that would plague the public consciousness for decades. Historians still argue whether the post-war suppression of certain sensitive discoveries fueled public distrust and created a vacuum that conspiracy theories eagerly filled, or if such secrecy was genuinely necessary to maintain global stability in a fragile world. You, having witnessed the sheer strangeness within the bunker, can see both sides of that argument, and perhaps a frightening validity to the necessity of keeping such terrifying knowledge from a populace already reeling from years of war. The world might have just healed a wound, only for this discovery to rip it open again, revealing something far more insidious beneath. As the veil of secrecy tightened around Project Phoenix, a strange phenomenon began to unfold beyond the barbed wire fences of the dig site. The sheer impossibility of what was found within, coupled with the tightly controlled information leaks and the visible military presence, became fertile ground for every kind of wild speculation imaginable. Soon, the world wasn't just talking about a forgotten Nazi bunker, it was talking about alien technology, occult rituals, and secret societies plotting world domination from the shadows. The human mind, when presented with a vacuum of information, quickly rushes to fill it with the most dramatic, and often terrifying, narratives. You'd hear the whispers, even among the most disciplined personnel. Some claimed the biological specimens were proof of contact with extraterrestrial life, meticulously catalogued by the Nazis. Others believed the advanced machinery wasn't reverse-engineered, but given to them by unseen forces. The Bell theories, initially dismissed as fringe, gained new traction, twisting the real anomaly of the bunker into something even more sensational. Mainstream historical fact: the post-war era saw a significant rise in UFO sightings and popular fascination with extraterrestrial life. Fueled by the development of jet aircraft and rocket technology, this cultural zeitgeist provided a ready framework for interpreting the unexplained, and the Nazi regime, with its known occult interests, became an easy target for incorporating into these new mythologies. The conspiracy theories began to cross-pollinate, creating increasingly elaborate and fantastical narratives. Some posited that the bunker was merely a staging ground, and that the true architects of Project Phoenix had escaped, perhaps even to hidden bases in Antarctica or on the dark side of the moon, continuing their work in secret. You'd overhear hushed conversations about the missing SS gold being used to fund these secret post-war operations, or about Hitler himself having faked his death and living out his days in a subterranean lair, protected by the very technologies you'd unearthed. It's almost comical, if it weren't for the unsettling truth that sparked these wild tales. A quirky tidbit that emerged during this time was the notion of vril power, an esoteric concept borrowed from a 19th-century novel about an advanced subterranean race, which some conspiracy theorists believed the Nazis were attempting to harness for their own malevolent ends. The strange energy signatures and the inexplicable power sources found in the bunker seemed to provide circumstantial, if utterly unproven, evidence for these outlandish theories. It was a bizarre blend of science fiction, historical fact, and pure paranoia, brewed into a potent cocktail of public anxiety. Historians still argue whether the deliberate obfuscation and classification of sensitive post-war discoveries inadvertently legitimized many of these fringe theories, creating a lasting legacy of distrust between governments and their populations. Or was the alternative, full disclosure of something so profoundly disturbing, simply too dangerous for a world still reeling from a global war? As you recall the bizarre artifacts and the chilling purpose of Project Phoenix, you can almost understand the impulse to keep it hidden, even at the cost of fostering wild speculation, because sometimes, the truth is far stranger, and far more terrifying, than any fiction, and the world, perhaps, wasn't ready to face a reality where the Third Reich had been dabbling in cosmic horrors. Even as the conspiracy theories spun wildly outside the heavily guarded perimeter, Inside the bunker, the meticulous, frustratingly slow process of genuine investigation continued. The initial shock had given way to a grim determination to understand precisely what Project Phoenix was, what it achieved, and what its ultimate implications might be. Specialists from various fields, physics, biology, linguistics, and even psychology, were brought in, each contributing their piece to the increasingly complex puzzle. You found yourself a silent observer to these intense, often heated, intellectual debates. The technological devices were carefully dismantled, piece by painstakingly documented piece. Every wire, every strange crystal, every unique alloy was analyzed. The biological specimens underwent genetic sequencing, though the results often baffled even the most experienced geneticists, showing chromosomal structures that simply did not conform to any known terrestrial life. The strange symbols and languages were fed into nascent computing machines, attempting to find patterns and break their cryptic codes. It was an intellectual battle against time and the sheer alienness of the discoveries. Mainstream historical fact: the post-war scientific community, particularly in the fields of rocketry, nuclear physics, and medicine, benefited significantly from the capture of German scientists and their research. However, this transfer of knowledge was highly selective, focusing on immediately applicable technologies. Project Phoenix, in its scale and nature, would have demanded a far more profound and secretive integration into global research, or a complete suppression. Its continued investigation remains a testament to its unique and unsettling properties. One of the linguists, a quiet, intense woman who seemed to live on coffee and the thrill of deciphering ancient scripts, finally made a breakthrough on some of the recurring symbols. They weren't a language in the traditional sense, she posited, but rather a form of highly condensed information, almost like a visual programming language, designed to convey complex scientific principles in an extremely efficient manner. A quirky tidbit she discovered was that certain symbol clusters seemed to resonate with ancient alchemical sigils, leading to speculation that the Nazis had either rediscovered or somehow independently developed an understanding of certain fundamental universal principles that had been hinted at by occultists for centuries. It was a terrifying thought, that their madness might have actually touched upon something genuinely profound, however twisted their application. The debate among the experts was constant and fierce. Historians still argue whether the resources poured into such esoteric projects by the Nazis were a strategic blunder that diverted critical efforts from conventional warfare, or if they represented a desperate, last-ditch attempt to achieve a technological singularity that would guarantee their victory. The ongoing investigations into Project Phoenix consistently reignited this debate. Was it the ultimate folly, or a terrifying glimpse into a path humanity was perhaps not yet ready to tread? As you witnessed the meticulous work, the fragments of understanding slowly forming, you couldn't help but feel a chilling sense of unease. The more they understood, the more terrifying the potential of what lay frozen within the bunker truly became. The very act of investigation felt like an awakening, a delicate dance with something that perhaps should have remained dormant. The deeper the investigations delved into Project Phoenix, the more the initial scientific awe gave way to profound ethical quandaries. It wasn't just about understanding the technology or the biological anomalies, it was about the moral implications of what had been created, and what should be done with it. You witnessed the heated discussions among the assembled experts, some advocating for immediate destruction, others for continued study, and a few, disturbingly, for cautious application. The air in the bunker, already heavy with the past, became charged with the weight of future decisions. Consider the biological specimens. While utterly alien in their morphology, they represented, in a chilling way, life. Should they be preserved, perhaps in the hope of future scientific understanding? Or were they abominations that needed to be permanently eradicated? The ethical debate surrounding genetically modified organisms in your own time seems quaint compared to the moral abyss presented by these creatures. What if their unique biological properties could be weaponized? What if they carried unknown pathogens? Or, conversely, what if they held secrets to unprecedented medical breakthroughs? The very existence of these things forced humanity to confront its own definitions of life and its boundaries. Mainstream historical fact: the aftermath of World War II led to the establishment of international ethical guidelines for scientific research, particularly in medicine and human experimentation. Directly in response to the atrocities committed by the Nazis, the discovery of Project Phoenix, with its disregard for any ethical standard, would have undoubtedly fueled this conversation, pushing the boundaries of what humanity considered morally permissible in the pursuit of knowledge. You observe a bioethicist, her face drawn and pale, arguing passionately about the inherent danger of preserving knowledge gained through such horrific means. She speaks of forbidden science and the slippery slope of utilizing the fruits of unimaginable cruelty. A quirky tidbit she brings up is the historical debate surrounding ancient texts or artifacts believed to possess malevolent power, sometimes deliberately buried or destroyed by past civilizations. She suggests that, perhaps, humanity has, at various points, understood the necessity of letting certain horrors remain buried. Could Project Phoenix be such a horror? A kind of scientific Pandora's box that, once opened, can never truly be closed. Then there were the technological anomalies, machines that hinted at mastery over fundamental forces, potentially offering limitless energy, instantaneous communication across vast distances, or even manipulation of space-time itself. The allure was undeniable, but these were technologies born from the darkest recesses of human ambition, forged by a regime dedicated to conquest and annihilation. Historians still argue whether pure scientific discovery can ever be truly separated from the moral context of its creation, or if the origin forever taints the potential benefit. The dilemma presented by the bunker's technology was precisely this: could humanity responsibly wield such power, knowing its genesis, or would it inevitably lead to a terrifying repetition of history, with a new, equally ruthless power attempting to harness its destructive potential? The air crackles with these unresolved questions, a chilling reminder that the discovery was not just a historical revelation, but a living, breathing ethical challenge, forever echoing in the cold, silent chambers of Project Phoenix. The final, chilling truth of Project Phoenix is not just what was discovered within its cold, concrete embrace, but its enduring impact. This isn't a story confined to dusty history books or academic debates. It's a ripple that continues to spread through the collective consciousness, a silent shiver whenever the true depths of Nazi ambition are considered. The bunker, meticulously resealed and heavily guarded, became more than just a site of historical discovery. It became a symbol, a dark testament to the lengths humanity can go when twisted ideology meets unbound scientific ambition. Even now, decades later, the shadow of Project Phoenix lingers. The highly classified nature of its contents, while arguably necessary for global stability, continues to fuel speculation and inspire countless works of fiction, each trying to grasp the terrifying reality of what lay hidden beneath the earth. The very idea that such advanced, horrifying experiments could have been conducted in absolute secrecy continues to disturb. It forces you to question not just history, but the very nature of power, control, and the hidden agendas that might still exist in the world. Mainstream historical fact: the legacy of Nazi scientific atrocities continues to influence modern ethical guidelines in research, particularly in areas like genetics and artificial intelligence, serving as a stark warning against unchecked scientific ambition. Project Phoenix, even if its full extent remains shrouded in secrecy, stands as the ultimate, unspoken example of that warning. The world remembers the broad strokes of the war, the battles, the heroes, the villains, but the whispered stories of Project Phoenix touch on something far deeper. A primal fear of the unknown, of what lies beyond the accepted boundaries of science and reality. The memory of those alien biological forms, the inexplicable machinery, and the chilling purpose of resurrection and reconstruction never truly fades. A quirky tidbit you might hear whispered among those who know too much is that the very air around the bunker still feels different. A subtle hum, a lingering cold, as if the energy it once contained, or perhaps generated, can never be fully dissipated. Historians still argue whether the discovery of Project Phoenix fundamentally altered post-war scientific trajectories, pushing certain research fields into deeper secrecy or even abandonment, to avoid repeating such a profound ethical catastrophe. Or did it, in a twisted way, accelerate some advancements, driven by the morbid curiosity of what the Nazis had almost achieved? The answer remains elusive, shrouded in the layers of classification that still protect the bunker's deepest secrets. You, having walked through those silent, chilling chambers, carrying the weight of what they contained, understand that some discoveries aren't just about what was found, but about the haunting, lingering questions they leave behind. The cold, precise silence of Project Phoenix continues to whisper its unsettling truths, a stark reminder that the past, however deeply buried, can always rise again. The final image, as you slowly withdraw from this chilling historical journey, is not one of grandeur or triumph, but of quiet, profound contemplation. The air around you softens, the phantom chill of the bunker receding, replaced by the gentle comfort of your own space. The echoes of strange machinery and forgotten whispers fade, leaving only the quiet hum of your fan, a gentle, reassuring presence. Let the stories settle now, like dust motes in a shaft of moonlight, each detail finding its place in the quiet corners of your mind. There are mysteries that defy easy answers, and perhaps some that are better left undisturbed, slumbering deep beneath the earth, waiting for the long, long sleep to finally take hold. Allow yourself to drift now, away from the shadows, away from the unsettling truths of the past. Let the darkness be kind, and the quiet envelop you.